How about books? Marlene?
Magazine.
Just Marlene?
Just like that. That's a good idea. Thank you. That is smart because as I say, we're working magazine. Thank you very much. I appreciate the interest.
Is that what we usually get? We gave it to you.
Stand up.
Okay, let's get started.
Who are you?
Right. For people that don't know me, I think most do. I'm Michael Cantwell. I'm the president of the Democratic Club of Delray Beach.
Hey.
It's a nice turnout, and we owe it to 3 or 4 people. First of all, Fred, because we wouldn't have this turnout if it was someone else. Rob Resnick, who's sitting next to him, our board member, who's been trying to get Fred for about a year now. And Fred, to his credit, doesn't want to promise that he's going to come if he's going to get called to make a speech in Denver or somewhere else. So, yeah. And then promoting this, there's a lot more people here than normal because of 2 of our new board members, June Neal and Kate Woodward, who are sitting right at the front. They are our outreach committee. What? Well, communication. It's traditional media and social media, and they really cover the ground very well. So. Our club was founded back in the early 90s by my aunt and my cousin over there, David Kulick's mother, Marion Kulick, and her partner in politics, I like to call him, Sam Lender, who was the president for many, many years. We're a progressive club. We are from, to channel the late, great Paul Wellstone. We're from the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party, which is not to disparage the other wings. We really need to stick together now. This is John le Carre, the spy writer, said back during the early days of the Iraq invasion. He said, America is going through one of her periodic bouts of madness. She's gone through it before and always come out of it, but this is worse than ever. Well, this is worse than ever, you know. I mean, it is, you know, we have to be fighting every day. There is, somebody years ago said to me, Mike, you think there are, you know, you think all Democrats are good and all Republicans are bad. I probably shouldn't repeat this because I said no. I think there are some bad Democrats. But I don't think there are any good Republicans. There is, you know, I'm not aware of you know, the best Republican is worse than the worst Democrat. And there are 3, in my opinion, 3 big issues. There's the guns, there's climate change, which is maybe the biggest, and then there's health care. And on every one of those issues, I remember Paul Krugman said in a column years ago when people talked about meeting in the middle. He said, how are you going to meet in the middle when one party wants to privatize Social Security and the other party wants to give health insurance to everybody? And that's really where we are now. So we've been around for a while, the club. We're trying to build up some more, and that's why You saw in the sign-in sheet, we've got a volunteer. We've got a bunch of committees. We need people. I like writing for the newsletter. There are other people that like writing, but we'd like more voices. You know, so if you're inclined towards that, please sign up for that. There's the Resistance Committee. We need to get out on the streets. We need to be handing out leaflets. June and, I don't know that June and Kate need any help, but June's shaking her head. You know, if that's something that you're interested in. Before I introduce a couple of local officials, I want to say, and I actually forgot to say, that after Sam Lender, John Ramos twice, Carol Gewurz, Jackie Sinatra, Jessica Deere for one absolutely brilliant meeting that she ran, and Nancy Albano are my predecessors, and I'm honored and humbled to be following them. Okay, we have Jim Bonfiglio and Maria Sachs and Shirley Johnson, who is actually the only official in office right now. Jim would be in office if we voted, if the people in District 87 voted, because he lost that House, Florida House seat by 32 votes. Out of how many cast? 8,000?
83,000.
83,000, he lost by 32 votes. I mean, that's shameful, you know, and that's on us. That's on us because the Republicans got their voters out in a way that we didn't, and that's what we have to be doing over the next, you know, however many days it is. So, Jim, you want to say a few words, and then...
Okay, Michael.
Hi, everyone.
Hey!
Again, my name is Joe Bonfiglio. I am the District 89 representative in waiting for the 2020 election. Because, as Mike pointed out, I ran in the last cycle, 2018. I lost by 32 votes out of 83,000 ballots cast. Let me go through some of those statistics for you to see how you can understand the importance of voting and voting down ballot. There were 83,000 ballots cast in the race. Of those 83,000, 3,000 were undervotes in my race, which means that, and I think about 37 overvotes, which means that people voted in the gubernatorial race or the Senate race or some of the other statewide officials, but they didn't drop down and vote for District 89. So there were 3,000 votes that were not cast. That left a little bit less than 80,000 ballots, resulting in a tie, in a 37 vote differential before the recount. I had to sue the Secretary of State, Supervisor of Election, to get my race counted, because if you remember, the four statewide races were all within the margin for recounts, and our machines were not capable of counting all four races in one sweep of the ballots, which meant that they had to run 1 million ballots through 4 times before they got to my race, which was 83,000 ballots had to go through, and there just wasn't enough time. So I sued to get counted. I won. They counted Bill Nelson's race, and then they went to mine. The recount on my race resulted in picking up 5 votes, and I lost by 32 votes. Let me give you some more statistics about the importance of voting and how important it is to get those former felons, get their rights restored and get them registered and get them to vote. The Republicans have about a 3,000 to 4,000 voter registration advantage. It's about 44,000 to 40,000 to about 39,000 NPAs. The Republicans turned out around 74% for my race. The Democrats turned out about 64%. Well, when you combine the fact that there were 4,000 more Republicans than Democrats, I had a huge deficit that I had to make up. I made up that deficit in the NPAs thanks to a lot of the folks that are sitting here. You knocked on doors, you phone banked, you were at the Supervisor of Election office, and I thank you all for contributing, but we need to educate the voters on how to vote and how to do the down ballot voting, and you need to get voters out. We need to increase the ballots, increase the voter turnout for the Democrats and the NPAs. That's how I'm going to win this race in 2020. One other point that I would like to point out what I support is gun control. The federal legislation that was passed in 1994 was a pretty good template to use. It had a 10-year expiration, but it controlled semi-automatic weapons, it controlled extended magazines, it controlled some of the ammunition, and I would like to, and that legislation withstood 2 circuit court appeals. It didn't get to the Supreme Court because it expired in 2004, and the Republican Congress did not renew the legislation. So those are some of the things I would like to do when I am elected in 2020 and actually become your District 89 representative. Thank you so very much. Jim Bonsiglia, State House District 89.
Thanks, Tim. I'm going to introduce Maria Sachs, and then we're going to get on with the program. Rob Resnick will be introducing Fred.
Jim, you just got those 35 votes. Right now, you just got it. I'm Maria Sachs. I just want to say one thing. Thank you for the children who are in the room today, because this is our legacy. We pass on our democratic principles and policies and our philosophy to the kids, especially the cookies in the back, too. Does a lot. But I want to thank you, all of you, for making that possible to have the children here. And because I think the more they're here, the more they're going to hear from our good speaker today. They will lead us into tomorrow. Thank you very much. I'm Maria Sachs. Good to see you again.
And Shirley Johnson, who is one of our, actually she's the vice mayor and running for re-election.
Good evening. The worst thing you ever want to do is give a politician or an elected official or someone running for office a microphone. So all I want to do is say thank you, Mr. Guttenberg, for coming to see us. Because of you, we have a room full of people. So the next meeting, please find someone else so we can have a room full of people. So welcome to the Delray Beach Democratic Club. I'm afraid I haven't been able to attend many of the meetings because there's always something going on in the city. I am presently the vice mayor, and my term is going to end in March 2020, which means I'm going to be on the March 2020, actually March 17, 2020 election. It's a little ironic because that's also the primary for the presidential candidates. So talking about down ballot, please go all the way down to the city of Delray Beach, pull the lever or mark the ballot, whatever we have now, I don't know what we have, for Shirley Johnson for City Commission Seat 4. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. Thanks everybody for coming. I have the true pleasure and honor tonight of introducing our speaker. I have known Fred for 35 years. When we met up at Skidmore College, when we were both in our first year, go Thoroughbreds. But it's been interesting because when I came down here 3 years ago, we were able to reconnect, and then, of course, shortly thereafter that, you know what happened, you know his story. And the person that I knew in college became something of a hero to every community, not just here in South Florida, but the entire state and the entire nation, by his efforts, his never-ending efforts, no matter what obstacles he faces, to challenge the NRA, to work with Congress, to work with governors, to work with state legislatures, and not accept no for an answer. That's the Fred Guttenberg I want. Please welcome Fred.
I'm going to sit up here like you were doing. Make this a little relaxed. Where's all the kids in the room? Got it. All right. So before I get started, I want to ask y'all to do me a favor. I want everyone to get into a happy place. Think of that best moment with a loved one. Think of a favorite vacation. Time with your kids, your grandkids, your parents. But get into a happy place. Get into that feeling for me. Are we all there? Boom!
Yeah. Yeah.
That sound for me is what ended my happy place. And I apologize, but you know what? Every day people say to me, I can't imagine how you feel. And you know what? If we're going to win this fight, everyone needs to imagine not only how I feel, you need to imagine how you would feel if that were you. And you need to fight like it is you. So think about this. Who's sitting next to somebody they love right now? Not too many of you. All right, of the people who are sitting next to someone that they love, did you drive here separately?
No.
So imagine being with somebody you love to start your day. Imagine, maybe you told them you loved them when you saw them the last time, maybe you didn't. And then getting the news that you would never see them again. Imagine what it would be like to never tell that person you love that you love them again. I mean, yeah, you get to visit them at the cemetery and you say it. It's not the same. So, I didn't bring you through this exercise to make you all miserable. I brought you through this exercise to make you understand why you must fight, why you must be part of making this the voting issue of 2020. Your lives depend upon it. And if you don't believe me, we have 40,000 people per year in this country dying right now from gun violence, about 23,000 injured from gun violence. That comes out to about 100 a day dying of gun violence in this country. In the time that I'm going to be sitting here giving you all this little chat, there's somebody learning they're a victim of gun violence. There's somebody who just finished burying a victim of gun violence. And there's somebody who just finished planning a funeral for a victim of gun violence. That's America today. That's not normal. That's not okay. So I want to give you a little bit of my background and my story so you understand maybe how I got to this place. I know it didn't start 35 years ago at Skidmore. That was part of it. But I had a normal life, you know? I graduated Skidmore. I spent a lot of years working for Johnson & Johnson. Then I spent a bunch of years with my own business owning Dunkin' Donuts locations. And I sold my business in November of 2016. The reason why that date is important is my brother. My brother ran the triage for the World Trade Center. He was a physician. And he was actually the deputy medical director of the New York Fire Department. My brother was in the World Trade Center by the time the second building was getting hit. He was in the World Trade Center when it collapsed. And amazingly, he and a group of about 10 other doctors, they hid out. And the room they hid out in, for some reason, didn't collapse. And he and this amazing group of heroes, rather than running away, went to the command post after they were able to exit safely and said, where do we go now? And he spent 16 days at ground zero. In 2013, he got the cancer that resulted from that. Pancreatic, he had surgery, chemo, radiation, and amazingly, they said he was cancer-free until 2016. It came back a few months before I sold my business. My brother lived by himself in New York. He wasn't married, he didn't have kids. And 2016 really became a bad year. I'll never forget sitting with him one night and a friend in New York, trying to cheer him up, and saying to him, you're like a cat with 9 lives, you're going to be fine. You know, you survived the World Trade Center falling on you, you survived pancreatic cancer, you'll survive this. And he said to me, and don't forget, I've been shot at twice as well. And I tell you that because that's how pervasive this is. My brother, way back when, when, as a physician even, he would still go out on ambulances, and he went into some tough areas. And he was shot at twice as well. Never in a million years did I expect that 4 months after burying my brother in October of 2017, because he did pass away, he was buried like a hero. New York Fire Department, they were amazing. For those of you from New York, they closed down the Southern State for his funeral. But never did I expect that what I thought was the worst moment in my life, that you couldn't go through anything worse as a family, would get a lot worse. 4 months later, my daughter, I sent my children to school. I sent 2 children to school. And I'm still a father of 2 kids. I'll never, ever, ever stop seeing myself as a father of 2 kids. But what I do now, this is how I continue being a father to my daughter. I sent 2 kids to school. What I remember about that day and that morning is it was the normal chaos in my house. My kids were running late, my dogs were barking, my wife and I needed to get out the door, and I am rushing my kids out the door. That's what I remember about that morning. Get out of here, you've got to go to school, you got to go to school, go to school. I am haunted by the fact that I can't remember, and I fear that I didn't tell my children that morning, I love you, as I was rushing them out the door. I was too busy rushing my daughter to the place where she would get killed. And I tell you that because I want every one of you, every chance you get, to look everyone you love in the eye and never miss the second to say, I love you, because you don't want it to be the last time. I sent my daughter to school. That's all I did that day. Without reliving that day, what happened to my daughter has become my life's mission. A few weeks after it happened, actually not even a few weeks, maybe a week later, the person who really gave me direction was Joe Biden. He called me on the train from Virginia to New York, just to talk. I don't know how he got my phone number, and I was getting a lot of calls. So if I saw a private number, I didn't answer. But he left a message, and he said exactly when he'd call him back again, so to make sure I picked up the phone, and I did. And when he said who it was, I'm thinking, all right, we'll have a 2-minute conversation here. He kept me on the phone for 45 minutes. And then he also invited me to a fundraiser that he was doing in Palm Beach 2 weeks later. The thing about it, let me take a step back at the fundraiser, where he had a room full of 250 people waiting for him. And I thought, again, he'll give me 2 minutes. And I brought one of the other Parkland dads with me. He sat in this room with us for another 45 minutes while he had 200-something people waiting for him. And about 20 minutes in, I said, don't you need to get out there? He said, this is more important. And I will tell you, I will never forget that moment with him. But here's what he spoke to me about: mission and purpose. Mission and purpose. Those words will live in my head forever. And he said to me, your pain will never go away. But every day, you'll go forward with mission purpose, you'll put a little bit more space between you and your pain. And so that has been my life, mission and purpose, mission and purpose. In the immediate aftermath of my daughter's murder, I don't remember a whole lot about that very first week. The day after, I went to a vigil in Parkland. The mayor, when I got there, asked me if I wanted to speak. I didn't bring a speech. I brought a speech for tonight, but we don't need it. The mayor asked me if I wanted to speak. I hadn't prepared anything. I wasn't at the time a public speaker. I've kind of gotten used to it now. But I went up there and I just started going with what was in my heart and my head. And that was the night where I realized my life was going to be changed forever. A few days later, some of you may have seen the CNN town hall where I challenged Senator Rubio. I haven't stopped since, and I'm not going to stop, because your lives are worth it. The lives of those you love are worth it. The week that my daughter died, other than thousands of people through my house wanting to, come visit us for Shiva, what I remember about that week is just saying, and I'll clean it up, I'm going to break that effing lobby. I'm going to break that effing lobby, and that would be the gun lobby. And that was my mission. That was my purpose. And I said often that week, and in weeks and months, and now a year and a half since, go after the money. And guess what, folks? We're breaking that lobby. They are hurt. For all of you who are elected people in this room, nothing personal. At the time, I had no desire to work with elected people. I saw that as having failed. Legislators and legislation, to me, were all held hostage by that lobby, and the only way to get this done was going to be to break that lobby. And their grip has weakened. They are still available. Don't anybody get the wrong message. They're not gone. They're weakened. And our job now is to ensure that this issue remains a core top 3 voting issue going into the next election. Unfortunately, without us trying hard, it probably will, because you know what? There's going to be more mass shootings. That's America today, people. So, the first night of sitting Shiva, I got to know Ted and Jill Deutsch. And they have become some of my dearest, closest people. When I say I love them, I love them. But I didn't want them at my house at first. Jill Deutsch, it turns out, is very good friends with a friend of my sister. And she reached out through this intermediary to get to my sister to see if they could come. And I said no. I didn't want any politicians at my house. But they kept on trying. My sister ended up convincing me. I said they've got 10 minutes and then I want them gone. Now, I don't remember this, but Jill Deutsch has reminded me of this moment many times. I greeted them in the driveway to tell them, you have 10 minutes, and I apparently was putting my finger in Ted Deutsch's face, saying, I'm going after the lobby, I'm coming after everyone in Washington, and you're either with me or against me, and you better be with me. And I was pretty amped up. Thankfully, he's been with me. He's been amazing. You can't ask for a better person. Another person who's been with me from down here, who introduced into the House and then we have Senator Blumenthal on the Senate side, Jamie's Law, is Congressman Wasserman Schultz. Before the last election, I sat with her in her office, and she asked how I'm doing, what's happening with the fight, and I said, the folks at the NRA, their arguments are really weak. I don't know how they got to this point. I said, the only argument they make that is a really solid argument, and I don't have a solid response, is when they say, there's already 300 million weapons in America. Nothing you do is going to change that. And it's not incorrect. So Congressman Wasserman Schultz says to me, well, maybe we can do something. And if you're a prohibited purchaser of firearms in this country, by law, you are also prohibited from buying ammunition. But here's the problem. There's no requirement for a background check on ammunition. So all those bad guys with guns, here's reality, everybody. If you're someone who wants to commit a crime, background checks aren't going to really change anything, because you'll get one of the 300 million weapons that are already out there through private transfer, illegal transfer, whatever. But none of those guns work without bullets. Think of the Odessa shooting. That person was prohibited, but got it through a private transfer and walked into a store to buy the bullets, because there's no background check required on ammunition. So what Congressman Wasserman Schultz said to me is, we should extend background checks to ammunition. That will solve the problem. And we ended up working together and naming it Jamie's Law in honor of my daughter. My daughter will save lives forever. And just this week, Representative Dan Daly and Senator Lauren Book introduced Jamie's Law here in Florida State. What? Yeah? Yeah, but listen, I don't want to wait on DC to make it a national law, so I'm working through the states, and a lot of states, by the end of this year, will actually have passed Jamie's Law. Step by step, law by law, city by city, state by state, we are going to get gun safety done. Now, we have a roadblock. It's called the Senate. Candidly, I consider the Senate a bigger issue in the next election than the president. Well, listen, there's only one person, Mitch McConnell enables the president. You flip the Senate, there is no more president to be enabled. And the reality is, right now, the House of Representatives is passing some great legislation, and it's not going anywhere. We must flip the Senate. We must work to change McConnell, to get rid of all those on-the-fence senators who are holding up legislation. I will tell you, my life's mission for the next year is the next election. Somebody's phone is, there you go. That's all right. My life's mission for the next year is the next election. I want to flip the Senate, yes. We need decency back in DC, and we got to get rid of this president. I'm with you. But the Senate graveyard needs to be put out of business. And when I was talking to you about my happy place, I think of a majority leader Schumer. That's because that means we're going to get this done. And so my call to action to all of you, before I talk directly to the kids back there, my call to action to all of you is, if you think you've worked hard on campaigns before, you haven't. You need to work harder this year. You need to knock on more doors. You need to give more support. You need to do more. This election is about the future of this country. It's about our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's about our rights to be free from gun violence. So before I exit, I do want to just say something. It's to everybody, but I really deliver this message to the kids. And I just want to talk about perspective. We all go through moments in life that we say, God, that was the worst. This is the worst moment. Whether it was relationships related, job related, business related, or you got a parking ticket. It was the worst moment. I can't believe. And then you go forward a week or two, and you honestly don't remember what the moment was. What happened to my family, that was a real worst moment. And I tell you this because I want everyone in life to remember we all have our moments, but ultimately what defines us, and this is why I really want to address this to the kids, it isn't the moment, it's how you react to it, it's how you respond to it. You all have levels of perseverance that you don't know about until tested. And when you look at this country and this country's history, whether it be after episodes of gun violence, or after 9/11, or after other tragic events or amazing events, it's in those moments that this country's heroes and leaders are born. And I am counting, while we all need to fix the mess that we left you kids, I am counting on you kids to be the amazing future leaders of this country, and the way you react to your moments when they come will determine who those future leaders are. And so with that, I look forward to our future leaders. I look forward to seeing all of you out there the next year. Thank you. So while you're all standing, Rob is reminding me to just mention my foundation, Orange Ribbons for Jamie. And let me just tell you the story behind it. For most people probably know, my daughter was an amazing competitive dancer. Her favorite color also happened to be orange. The color of my foundation actually is not because of gun safety. It's because it was my daughter's favorite color. The day she was killed, her dance, I call them her dance sisters, they all came over our house. They went to the studio right after they heard and started making thousands of orange ribbons for us to give out at the funeral. They all came over wearing their orange ribbons. As happens in these days, somebody posted it on Facebook. It went viral through the dance community, not just in this country, but around the world. And dancers around the world were wearing orange ribbons. Broadway started dedicating shows to my daughter, and they were, you know, one night it was Lion King, one night it was Hamilton. They were all wearing, you know, orange ribbons. About 3 weeks after she was killed, somebody asked me what the orange ribbon was for, and I told them, and they said, you know, that's the color of the gun safety movement, and it was a connection that I couldn't ignore, and that was the day I decided to start Orange Ribbons for Jamie, which is designed to honor my daughter in life. I started Orange Ribbons for Gun Safety to do all my advocacy through, but Orange Ribbons for Jamie is about my daughter. It's about the things that matter to her. Through this foundation, we're actually doing a big nationwide dance-a-thon fundraiser next month. And our plan with the money that we raise and as we grow is to start a college scholarship program for kids of all abilities. And what I mean by that is not just kids going to traditional colleges, but my daughter volunteered all of her spare time for kids with special needs. And I want our scholarship program to also be available to those kids who may not go to traditional college, but are going to go to something post-high school. So our scholarship program is going to be for kids of all abilities, and we start fundraising next month with the dance-a-thon, and then we're doing a big comedy show fundraiser in February. But that's Orange Ribbons for Jamie. So Rob, thank you for reminding me, and I thank you all for having me here tonight. Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Fred, do you want to, somebody,
I'll do the,
well, you have to move the thing around. Can you do it? Yeah. Okay,
Are we questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
You mentioned,
turn it on.
thank you.
You're welcome.
You mentioned future heroes with the kids who work in
My party
Hold it near you.
Okay, how's that?
Yep.
All right. You mentioned future heroes for the kids that are coming up, and God knows, we need it.
We still cannot hear you.
He mentioned future heroes with the kids that are coming up now, ready to vote, ready to go out in the world. But we have a hero right here. This man has gotten the attention of the nation and taught us what it's like to make a mark in the world, to do something really, really important. And we thank you for that.
that wasn't really a question, but, yeah, no.
How in the heck did you get that lawsuit undercut in Connecticut? I almost dropped when.
Wait,
The lawsuit, Connecticut, what's the
On the marketing, the marketing.
you're talking about the gun manufacturer
Yeah,
lawsuit?
yeah.
Well, that's not my lawsuit, but I have my own lawsuit filed against the gun manufacturer. I don't need the mic, right? You can hear me back there?
Yeah.
All right, I'm good. No, there's a law, there's a law called WAPA, okay, in the United States. It makes it illegal to sue gun manufacturers for the use of their weapons. So they are shielded from liability. There's no other product category in this country where anyone is shielded from liability. I don't care, And so I did file a lawsuit against the gun manufacturer. We've been now in front of a judge with the gun manufacturer who has filed a motion to dismiss, and we're waiting on a ruling from the judge. We're going to keep fighting. In Connecticut, some of the families got together and they also filed a lawsuit. And they actually have made it through multiple levels of hearings and dismissed the motions to dismiss, and they've gotten the Connecticut Supreme Court has agreed that these families do have the right to put the gun manufacturers under oath and question them about marketing practices. Now, that's gone up to a higher level of appeal, so they're not getting to do that yet. I will tell you, for my lawsuit, I want to do one thing. I want to put them under oath. And so, why do I want to do that? Because what do all these people say about AR-15s? It's a hunting weapon. It's a sport weapon. Okay? But yet they're making millions of them a year. There's not that many people using them for hunting and sport. And so I want them under oath so they can answer why they set the business goals that they did, what they knew about the real world results when they set those business goals, what strategies did they or didn't they take to deal with the real world results, and make it like what happened with tobacco. When they went under oath and had to tell the truth, it ruined the tobacco lobby. I want to make this industry what tobacco is today, which is irrelevant.
What is the utility of a gun? It is.
Hang on one second, Kate. As you were talking, I was thinking, regretting the fact that I wore this T-shirt tonight, which I thought was more family friendly than the T-shirt that I was going to wear that says "Vote Out NRA Whores." And you know, I didn't know if there were any whores around who would be offended by being. The other thing that I thought of was, and I haven't seen it in a bumper sticker, and I haven't seen it in a shirt, but I'm not the NRA, and I vote.
Yep.
That's the message. When you talk about one or two, you know, the problem is that the NRA supporters are single issue voters.
Right. And the problem is, the NRA has done a really wonderful job of making voters and legislators think they have more power than they actually do. 90% of America right now supports gun safety legislation. They support HRA, which is background checks. So what I would tell everybody is have no fear of bogus messaging, okay? Just keep working.
Who's got a mic?
Kate?
I was really amazed at the power that Marion Hammer has. Have you ever run into her? Like, that just shocks the hell out of me.
Me too. Me
I
too.
just can't get over that.
And still does. You know, listen. Thankfully, my dear friend Nikki Freed won Commissioner of Agriculture and kicked Marion Hammer out of that office, which was the office that decided who did and didn't get guns in Florida. And Marion Hammer is now out of it. But it is amazing the power that Marion Hammer had in this state with those conservative legislators from parts of the state that are not down here south.
More questions, Kate?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll get you next.
I don't need my
You go, okay.
You mentioned, I think, 3 or 4 times that your mission is to move forward with strength and purpose, correct? Is that
Mission and purpose.
Mission and purpose. Well, it struck me, and I wanted you to know this. I spent a great deal of time living in Hawaii, and I just changed my Facebook personal picture this week to a Hawaiian chant, spelled I-M-U-A, Emua, which means moving forward with strength and purpose. It's a chant.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I saw you, yeah.
Your pending litigation. I've been interested in the opioid litigation because part of that was based on public nuisance.
Yeah.
And is that something that's part of the theory of your litigation?
Listen, 100%. The difference is there is no law preventing people from suing the opioid manufacturers. It exists here. So listen, if we flip the Senate and the presidency, the House has already introduced a Plocka repeal. Mm-hmm. It will eventually be repealed if we all get this next election done right. Mm-hmm. But in the interim, listen, we filed a lawsuit. It's, the Plocka law says public entities, public agencies can't sue. It doesn't say victims of gun violence. And the problem is, it's been used against victims, and if you sue and lose, the manufacturers have been very aggressive about suing the people who sue them and bankrupting them. So we've gone to a judge to ask for permission to sue, saying it doesn't apply to us. And we're waiting for the outcome of that dismissal suit. If we get a positive ruling on that, we'll move forward. If we don't, we'll appeal.
Fred, I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know. We hear about the Second Amendment protecting an individual right to bear arms. You talk about the elections. What we need is a court. We need a Supreme Court that will overturn. I mean, I have in the newsletter here a quote from Chief Justice Lauren Berger, who was no liberal. And what he said in the 1990s was 1991 on McNeil era. The gun lobby's interpretation of the Second Amendment is one of the greatest pieces of fraud. Yep. I repeat the word fraud on the American people by special interest groups that I have ever seen in my lifetime. The real purpose of the Second Amendment was to ensure that state armies, the militia, would be maintained for the defense of the state. The very language of the Second Amendment refutes any argument that it was intended to guarantee every citizen an unfettered right to any kind of weapon he or she desires. And I mean, the champion of plain meaning, Antonin Scalia, who in my view was another fraud, somehow managed to misread the plain words of the Second Amendment.
So I'll say this. I'm not a guy who's going around trying to alienate somebody's Second Amendment rights. I do think we have a pretty bastardized interpretation of what the Second Amendment actually is, but I am not the guy running around this country telling legal, lawful gun owners that they shouldn't or couldn't have weapons. I am the guy running around this country trying to do everything I can to identify and keep weapons from those who predictably are going to kill. And so I don't, I think on the Second Amendment thing, the gun lobby has a really bastardized interpretation, because for them it means unlimited rights, no restrictions, slippery slope if we try to do anything. Here's my philosophy on the slippery slope, because that's where they always go with it. Is they use the Second Amendment interpretation to say, we can't do anything, because if you do something, then you're going to be doing something else. And then you're going to be doing something else. And then, that's a restriction on our rights. There's no guarantee to unlimited rights. My daughter had a right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It's been terminated. So the slippery slope argument for me is bogus. However, we've been on a slippery slope, okay? And it's been in favor of the gun lobby. Now, I'll just give you my version of the slippery slope. My daughter was born in 2003. In 2004, the assault weapon ban ended. In 2005, PLACA became law. And then in the years since, we have open carry and other weakenings of gun laws that have led us to the place where we are today, where more and more people keep dying. That's the slippery slope. So, to me, the gun lobby, they love getting people engaged in Second Amendment conversations because that just gets people left and right and nowhere else. And I try to keep it focused on, here's what we need to do. So, yeah, one or two more? Go ahead.
As you said, I think one of the only ways we're going to change some of this is the Senate and the presidency. But one of the things we can do right here, when we come on Thursday, once a month, is to have somebody outside signing people up to vote, because we need to sign more people up to vote. So I am suggesting that we work on that. I will be someone who I would be glad to help out. We could have people doing that, like someone could take a chance, so take turns or whatever. There are people passing by here who might not be registered.
Outside right now, you have the application for a bond out there right now, right? Ban assault weapons now? You're doing that? So has everyone in here done that?
And that should be doing too.
If you haven't, please do it, but you're absolutely right about registering to vote.
And if you can take 10 or more blank ones to get them signed, please see me. I'll be here till the last minute.
Pete had his
Who's speaking?
Pete had his arm up for a long time.
Good evening.
Hi.
My question is about background checks.
Yeah.
Most shooters are law-abiding citizens until they squeeze the trigger. So if we do background checks on people, what they did a year ago really has nothing to do with what they're going to do a week from today. Why is their background so important? I don't know, is there such a thing as a foreground check?
Well, but the truth is, and what you're right, people are legal lawful gun owners until they're not. That said, where background checks have been implemented in states that have closed the loopholes and have required, have been really great about sharing of information, those states do have lower rates of gun violence. You can't argue the numbers. So are background checks going to stop gun violence? No. In fact, the background check bill that just passed the House it's gun purchases going forward. It's not even about the 300 million that are already out there. That's why I believe so strongly in Jamie's law dealing with ammunition. But background checks, closing of loopholes, making private transfers and sales require background checks, and if not, and you get caught, you're breaking the law. There's a lot of things we can do. You're not going to stop everything. Traffic lights don't stop every accident, but they stop some of them, and that's step by step. We didn't get to 40,000 dying a year overnight. We're not going to get back to my goal. It's cutting that 50% in 10 years.
I'd like to say, when you were talking about voting and people voting, there's motivating people to vote, and then of course there's the Amendment 4 that passed last year, and the Republicans have done everything they can. A recent lawsuit, they said, if you designed a bill to prevent people from voting, the bill that the Republicans passed, that's exactly what it was. I bring this up because our next meeting, we're going to have a panel on what's being done to address what the Republicans have done with their response to Amendment 4. Because we're talking about 1.5 million people that very few of them are going to be able to vote unless there are some tactics that are being done in Dade, Miami-Dade, they've already passed something, and in Palm Beach County, there is going to be, there's some action. That's me.
What's up, Nick?
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
You keep reading. I'll do
It's
this. Go ahead, go
more
ahead.
a comment than a question. You know, of course, it's important that we vote, change the Senate and the president, but it's also important what we do in the state of Florida. And as Jim was saying, like, a lot of times people don't vote down ballot. That's where a lot of our laws are. If, like, anyone wants to go on the web, there's an organization called Future Now that explains how important state races are. We wouldn't be having this problem with Amendment 4 if we had a more Democratic legislature. So that's my 2 cents.
One more.
All right, one more?
One more?
I'm singing my song.
No, no,
I have nothing to do with that, so good question.
Flee.
I just want to say, why don't we look at what other countries do? I believe in Israel, every 2 years, you have to renew your license, you have to go for a mental health check. People change. So what we're doing now doesn't really solve any
Some
problems.
states do that. Do we already, listen, it's not rocket science when you look at states like Connecticut or Massachusetts that have some, Massachusetts has the lowest homicide, gun violence death rate in the country. Connecticut is right behind. And that's what they do. And they go further than that. It's not rocket science, things we can do to save lives. It takes the will to start doing it. However, I will tell you, and again, I'm a one-issue person right now. I really am. I hope you all understand that. I have optimism that my issue will be successfully handled after the next election. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. It's our pittance. All we can afford.